Midrange Paladin. This is probably the deck that looks the least unfair, which is the most competitive. This is one of those decks where there's nothing blatantly unfair about it. In fact, the only thing that is perhaps blatantly unfair is Muster for Battle plus Quartermaster, 8 mana, get 3/3/3s and a 2/5, and that is quite good. This is just one of those decks which has a really sturdy foundation, can handle most things that are thrown at it. In one season I placed top 20 with this exact list. It went on a very big win streak. The basics of it are you control the board early with Zombie Chow and Shielded Minibot. Hopefully you get the Dream 1-2-3 curve. Sometimes you can go really aggressive if you happen to get it. The thing about this deck is almost every single thing trades up, and almost every single minion combat against the same mana is won by the Paladin. For example, Zombie Chow beats every 1-drop. Shielded Minibot beats a lot of 2-drops and still survives. Muster for Battle beats a lot of 3-drops, so does Aldor Peacekeeper. Shredder and True Silver beat almost any 4-drop. And it just requires that kind of sturdiness and matchup win in order to ultimately come out ahead. This is one of the decks with a really balanced mana curve. You see cards from all 1 through 8, and pretty much you want to play on curve. Perhaps one of the big things about the deck is trying to get the most out of this 1/4 weapon, since you can eke out a little bit of value each time that you swing this 1/4 weapon, especially on a minion. Tech choices that I've seen run around involve like a second equality, Coghammer, Acolyte of Pain, Mind Control Tech, Kazan Mystic, Defender of Argus, an Azure Drake, usually put in instead of a Harrison Jones when there aren't that many weapons around, or if you happen to not have Harrison Jones. Dr. Boom is surprisingly optional, because if you don't run it, this is the only BGH target in the deck. Some people only run 1 Quartermaster instead of 2 because it is situational, but I think the impact of the Quartermaster is good enough to justify 2 of them.
Victory or death! I will fight with honor.
Getting rid of these cards, hoping to get the early game. Okay, that's good. So one of the problems with this deck, and why it faded a little bit out of popularity for those looking for a history lesson, is because it is notoriously bad against Patron Warrior, and the matchup is not good. But when you are up against a Patron Warrior, and warriors can be Patron Warrior, or they can be Control, the goal is just to beat them down as fast as possible. And that's possible with a good curve, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 curve. You're looking for the straight. And also particularly good, and the reason why in this particular deck version there's Harrison Jones instead of Azure Drake is because there are quite a few classes at the moment of this video to put in museums.
Back to work.
One of the big things about this deck, it's not necessarily that important against Patron Warrior, but against a lot of the other decks, is making the most use of the hero ability, since the Paladin hero ability is one of the longest lasting ones. Each 1/1 Silverhand recruit has the potential to do so much, especially with Quartermaster. So it's often worth it to, when you're running low on cards, to prioritize Silverhand Recruit over a worse play, for example. Over a better play, rather.
Weapon ready. Reporting for duty.
A lot of internal combos in the deck, such as Knife Juggler, Muster, Muster Quartermaster. Actually, all the combos pretty much stem from Muster and guys. Don't be too afraid of quartermastering just one guy, especially on turn 5. Needs to keep up the pressure, and pushing the button here is far too slow against this deck and against Deathspite. Although this one is looking more like a control warrior now. It was actually difficult to tell up until that point. The second quartermaster is going to want to be kept. It's going to be better to trade with these two rather than these two. One of the strengths of this deck against warrior is just that the hero matchup ability is so good for Paladin. Your 1/1 Silverhand recruits have no easy answer, and the armor up is almost irrelevant, since their health total doesn't matter too much. You're just fighting for the board control. In this case, the second quartermaster is really important, that he's control warrior.
Weapon ready.
Duty call. The battle.
At some point, the warrior is forced to brawl. Hopefully they play only one brawl. Because of the rise of Patron Warrior, some control warriors run 2 brawl, but generally assume 1. And from there on out, the next Muster Quartermaster I put out will hopefully get him. No, that belongs in a museum.
That belongs in a museum.
Duty call.
Deathspite is pretty much the best warrior weapon you can put in a museum. Oh, one big thing about Zombie Chow. It is perfectly fine to play it even in the mid-late game, which is why I'm okay at playing too. Like, Zombie Chow is one of the cards which a lot of people look at, and they're like, oh, it's so bad, you just play it and they gain 5 health. But it turns out that the body is good. I had the spare mana to play it. It's too early to not be... It's too early to... This deck doesn't have a lot of reach, so it's rarely right to keep it back, unless they're like barely staying alive. Here it handles the 2/2, and that's well worth the cost of giving him 5 health.
I have no time for games.
Here's where the power of the hero ability really starts to shine. If you get even a little bit of board control, you just keep getting the 1/1s, and the opponent hopefully stops having an answer for them sometime. Like, each time it's actually costing them a real card to deal with this guy button. Part of the reason why I like playing Paladin so much, and why I actually have Gold Paladin, is because of the value that this provides. Turn 8, turn 10, you're looking for the Muster Quartermaster or the Muster Guy Quartermaster. You'll note that I hit him there. That's trying to use the extra value of Light's Justice. Probably wouldn't have surprised anyone if I just passed here, but it turns out that dealing the 1 damage there is going to allow me to use the 3/3 and then +1 damage. So this will save some health on one of my minions later. And it goes to show how mostly relevant health is until you get post Alexstrasza. This is starting to like be a really specific matchup, but in general, don't be afraid of using the Light's Justice, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, so here I can deal 9 damage to his 16 health, putting him at 7. It is also possible to kill off his Sarah and lose most of my stuff.
For justice.
And then we'll start going for the throat here.
Duty call. The battle.
He's too low to worry about Ysera. This is an example of a small example of pressing the guide button over doing a stronger play like Muster, but Muster only summons 2 guys, so looks like he has Ysera Awakens. But the good news is he's kinda low. Alright, we're in trouble.
Let the pain speak to me. For justice.
At this point, it actually looks like there's very few ways to win. One of the problems with Warrior is, one of the problems with Paladin is if you lose the board control, then it doesn't matter quite how low the opponent is unless it's like 4.
I can take the hit.
No, and no guy because he has an Acolyte of Pain. This time around I will make a guy. It's behind Tyrion, it looks like he might want to use Acolyte against Tyrion. And if it takes 1 damage I can Consecration. Had to play around the exact... Sometimes you have to take some risks that they don't draw the 1 out of 5 Ysera Awakens. That happened to be exactly the card he needed there. It's too bad.
That belongs in a museum.
Oh, alright. The only answer to Ysera in this deck is usually having a board big enough to clear Ysera, or to have exactly equality.
For justice.
Here I'm going to keep going for his minions because he's just at way too high a life total to deal with. You play around Gromish, but let's see, 14, 19. It is possible to play around Gromish by playing Healbot, but this is one of the things that people often will incorrectly criticize for. Like, I died to such an obvious thing, and it's more likely than not that he has it, but I have to make this play because if I play anti-Killbot, I will probably lose still the long game. So I have to make a more daring play.
Well played.
Alright. Oh.
I will fight with honor. Justice demands retribution.
In many of the matchups, but especially against Paladin, it's all about getting that early game board control. So you try to start off with the Zombie Chow, the Minibot, the Muster. Those are the main cards that I would keep. Some people consider keeping Consecration in order to deal with Muster or a flood of cards on the board, but I prefer to just start off with the minions.
Shields up. Red alert. Shields up. Red alert.
Cards to think about keeping include Eldar Peacekeeper, True Silver Champion. In this matchup, I wouldn't keep either of those. I don't think they hit anything too relevant. His Argent Protector demonstrate that he's an aggressive deck. So I'll actually use the Owl here. Yeah, because the 1/1 does nothing. And the 2/1 can actually contest the 2/2. Hopefully he doesn't muster. But if he does muster, I can consider consecrating. But I possibly won't still. Because this consecration is actually very important. I'm going to try to egg him into getting more stuff. If he is a face paladin, he would usually go for face here. I know I, as aggressive paladin, would not trade into the shredder. Usually there's like a few cards here and there that you see which tip you off that it's a certain type of deck. In this case, it's the Argent Protector, which make me believe that he's actually a very aggressive deck.
For justice.
He might end up not being that, though. You can kind of also see by how that turn went, how Consecration, even though it seems like it would be really good, it sometimes just doesn't quite hit a lot if a lot of trading goes on. And that's what happens in mid-range versus mid-range, oftentimes. So I can either Consecration to remove 5 damage right now, or I can play this, that'll deal 6. This
I have no time for games.
is scary to do, but I think it's reasonable. And I'll save the weapon. That trade I don't think I agreed with on his side. It's a little too passive. At that point, in face honor, there's a certain trigger at which you should start going for face. And he was long past the trigger point. He's worrying about board control a bit too much. Still could win, of course. I'm looking to draw into the heal bot or the anti-kill bot right now. It does only have 1 card left, though. But quite a few of those would be chargers. One of the big combos in this deck is to be able to go Knife Juggler Muster. This rivals the Muster Quartermaster sometimes. So good news, bad news. He used both True Silver champions. Bad news. That's weird. Equality. Is that it?
Reporting for duty. Well played.
Great.
Well played.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17. Close.
I will fight with honor. Justice demands retribution.
Still a paladin, but perhaps this one is the more mid-rangey type. Again, I will replace everything that is not Zombie Chow, Shielded Minibot, Knife Juggler, Muster. I got the Zombie Chow. This is a really critical card in the early game board control games, of which Paladin is a really big one. Alright, so this is pretty much the dream. Chow into Minibot.
Shields up. Red alert.
Okay, so in this game I actually have the absolute dream of the 1, 2, 3. That is pretty much the best possible outcome for this deck. Against almost any deck, or perhaps against any deck, period. Yes, against any deck, period. The Blessing of Kings, I guess I'll speak to this also. It's not a card in every deck, and I think it puts a good amount of utility, but it's replaceable.
Reporting for duty. For justice.
Shield. Ready.
I guess if anything, we can compare this deck with this game with the last one, and how much of a difference just being able to have the early game board control will make this game quite a bit easier.
For justice.
Weapons ready.
The battle. The battle.
Like, this is the dream. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That looks like it might be some kind of setup for consecration, but that kind of is not.
The battle. The battle. For justice.
Play that instead of the on-curve card because this card is more powerful and I have no need for the health yet. Additionally, if it is consecration, this plus consecration kills the anti-kill bot, but this will at least have a death rattle.
I have no time for games.
Saving the last charge of Light's Justice is often good, especially against the Paladin. Going for the face of Light's Justice is almost never correct just because you can just keep whacking the guys. Never underestimate Light's Justice. Like for his deck, that's fine to use the last charge of Light's Justice going for face, especially if he's playing Muster for battle. He has weapons, they want to go face. But in a control deck, using these to remove guys is really powerful. What the? Alright.
Let none survive.
This card I think is dangerous enough to remove.
Reporting for duty.
2, 3, 4, 5. So I will kill a 1/1, which might cause him to take 3 by attacking the 3/5. I was a little bit too scared to take the damage from Leper Gnome. Here it looks like it wouldn't have mattered much. Well, it would have mattered, since Leper Gnome can actually go into Sylvanas.
Move quickly.
Looking back on it, it was probably a better idea to take out the 2/1, and I was a little bit unjustly scared.
The battle.
Let none survive.
Whoa, I'll talk about Big Game Hunter real quick while we're approaching near the end of this game. This card is completely okay to play on turn 3 against decks which you don't think are going to run a 7 or higher attack minion. And you'll usually be able to tell those by turn 3 if they're being really aggressive. I mean, same thing with any other deck which runs BGH. Don't be afraid to play BGH when your opponent's deck has no BGH targets.
I must move quickly.
Let none survive.